Welcome, and Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And I'll go right into the screen share.
Amen.
Thank you. And here we are. So, of course, okay, now you can see it. We're in Parsha of Ekev, and of course, continuing with Moses' speech, his corrective speech to the Jewish people, his ethical will, if you will. So, Ba'et Hahi, at that particular time, this is Moses continuing what he's saying. At that particular time, Amar Hashem Elai, Hashem said to me, Psol lecha, carve out for yourself, Shnei luchot avanim karishonim, 2 tablets of stone like the first. So just to put this into context, Moses has already been up for the first time for 40 days and 40 nights, receiving the Torah. The Israelites have heard the first 2 of the 10 commandments, and at the end of that 40 days, there was a slight miscalculation on the basis of which the Israelites wound up worshiping the golden calf, a nadir point in terms of Israelite history, and unfortunately, perhaps, how can I put it, a moment that would be connected to all future Israelite sins. And so that the next 40 days, Moses prays to God to forgive the Jewish people. And this is now coming at the end of that second set of 40 days. And God is now telling Moses to carve out for himself a second set of tablets. Va'alei elai hahara, and come up to me, go up to me on the mountain, up the mountain. V'asita lecha aron eitz, and make for yourself a box of wood, right? A wooden box. And let's take a look at the Rashi on this. Ba'etahi, at that time. So Rashi tells us, L'sof mem yom, at the end of 40 days, nitratzeli, Moses is saying, God was appeased, right? He allowed me to appeal, and he was appeased by me. For Amarli, it's really more that he accepted me, I think would be a better way to understand this. For Amarli, and God said to me, Psol lecha, go and carve for yourself. V'achar kach, and after that he says, V'asita lecha aron, and following that it says, and make for yourself a box. V'ani asita aron tchila. Well, I didn't do it in that order. I actually made the box first, even though God told me to make the box after I carved out that second set. So that when I came, v'haluchot biyadi, and with the tablets in my hands, heichan etnem, where would I be able to put them? In other words, the reason I made the box first was so that there'd be a receptacle for them when I came down off the mountain. I needed a place to put these tablets, and they would be there. They would be in this box. V'lo zeh ha'aron she'asa b'tzalel. So Rashi goes on to clarify that this is not the box, the ark that Betzalel made, that he fabricated. Shaharei mishkan lo nitasku bo ad la'achar yom haKippurim, because they were not involved, the Israelites were not involved in building the tabernacle. They didn't occupy themselves in the construction of the tabernacle until the day after Yom HaKippurim, the day after Yom Kippur. Ki beridato min hahar, because it was only after he came down off the mountain this third time, tziva lahem al melechet hamishkan. At that point, okay, so it was in the third set of 40 days that God instructed Moses regarding the construction of the tabernacle. So after he came down, after 120 days total, that's when he told them, about the construction of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. Uvetzalel asa Mishkan Chila, and when it came to the actual construction of the tabernacle, Betzalel first of all made tabernacle, v'acharkach Aron, and after that v'kelim, and after that he made the ark and the other vessels. V'nimtza ze Aron acher. So we have to conclude that this particular Aron, this particular ark, this particular box was a different one, different. Ze Aron acher haya, that it was a different box. V'zehu shaya yotze imahem lemelchama, and it was this particular little ark that would go out with them to battle. V'oto she'asa Betzalel, and as for the one that Betzalel created and made, lo yatsa lemelchama, it did not go out with them into battle. Ella b'mei Eli, except much later on during the days of Eli the priest. And this is a story that is mentioned in the first book of Samuel, early on in that book. The Israelites were fighting the Philistines, and they took the ark out with them, and apparently it was the ark that Bezalel had made, the Ne'emshu alav, and so they were punished because of doing that, Venishba, and it was captured. So it's an interesting story in the first book of Samuel, how the ark is captured by the Philistines, and subsequently it is returned. Yes, David.
Yeah, so, okay, going back to the box, since he built the box out of order, so is there any problem with that? It doesn't sound like it, because God told him to build the box after, and he built the box first. So, but I didn't hear that, this created any problems, but wanted to check.
I know. I agree. When I read it myself, I thought, interesting comment. So, is this, and I'm going to phrase it as a question because I'm not certain about this, is the degree to which you want to observe and obey divine commandment. That this gets into questions of how do we view our divine commander, our divine king? And to what degree do we follow his word to the letter? Because clearly the closer one is following exactly what you've been told to do, it is an expression of love, it's an expression of respect, and here he isn't doing exactly what he was told to do. And I'm thinking to myself that this is a perfect example, as we're talking about it, of circumstances alter cases, a phrase that if you had $1 for every time you heard me say it, you'd be a wealthy man. So at any rate, this is an example, and Rashi's giving you the circumstances, because had he gone ahead and fabricated the 10 Commandments or these tablets to begin with, he would have had no place to put it. And there's something also symbolic about it and metaphoric about it, that when we accept the Torah, we have to have a place to put it. You have to have a place. And of course, that place is represents a whole bunch of things. It has to do with our emotions. It has to do with the personal situation that we find ourselves in. It happens to do with what time period we're living. It has to do with geographic issues, seasonal issues, etc. And so I think the important issue is, do we see religion as something that's idealistic? And because it's idealistic, we really don't make such an effort. We feel it's sufficient to express these ideals, to articulate these ideals. But when it actually comes to putting those ideals into practice, we're not so strong about it. And the idea that, no, it's so important to be able to bring those ideals down into the real world. As much of a struggle as it is, as much effort as it takes, and you can't take a very literal approach to these things. You have to you have to work hard at it, and you have to put it in a context. You have to have a box in which to put it.
And I agree with everything you said. I think I have one more thought about this. I guess my other thought would be, was God actually testing Moses? In the sense that, okay, here, because Moses, in order to be a leader, right, you have judgment. You also have to make decisions. And like you said, when circumstances alter cases, you have to be able to adjust. But
Right,
you have to know how much to adjust, that you
right.
don't wind up deviating out of your original intent, right? So was that actually a test, slightly a small test for Moses to actually see, would he be able to make those adjustments when he needed to? So to me it seems like it's a very simple test, but it could be a test.
So I could say you could either look at it as a test or an opportunity.
Yeah, well, the same, yeah, same thing. I mean, but
Right,
my, yeah,
right.
that's my point. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And the other thing is, also to remember that we are reading about it, and that the Torah as a book of instruction, because the word Torah again has the basic meaning of teaching, that
Hmm.
this is one of the ways in which the Torah is trying to teach us to, and I love the symbolism of taking the Torah from heaven, which would mean its idealistic state, and bringing it down to earth, which is the
Pragmatic.
application, right? The
Yep.
application.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for raising these things, David. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, of course.
All right. Let's go on. So I think we got to the end. I think we read everything in that Rashi that we had to read. Oh, so I was pondering about a few different things. Okay, so for example, trying to peel away a little bit of the symbolism involved. So the issue that it mentions, tablets of stone, and what is the connotation of stone tablets? And of course, I think stone represents power. It also represents permanence. When we use the expression, it's carved in stone, it means you can't change it. And I think the idea here is that that when it comes to the Ten Commandments, they are unalterable and fundamental. That doesn't mean, of course, that circumstances may not have to be brought into play, but that when it comes to these particular Ten Commandments, you don't mess around with them. And that if you look at each one of those Ten Commandments, they represent very, very basic foundations of what it means to have this covenant with God. And of course, some of them are maybe easier to work on. Some of them are a little more difficult. For example, the commandment of the Sabbath is in there, right? The commandment regarding adultery is in there. The commandment regarding honoring your parents is in there. But there's some commandments that are not necessarily observed very carefully. And in a way, it's saying that the very foundation of human civilization, to maybe use an anachronistic term, is based on these kinds of things. And that when you start monkeying around with them, you're possibly going to do a lot of damage. And just the whole idea of when it talks about stone. And it also has to do with the fact that there are 10 commandments. We know there are many other commandments as well, not just those 10. But I've thought long and hard about why these particular 10. And I suspect that, different people have different opportunities, and in a way it's saying that you don't have to be perfect. I'm asking myself whether or not it's saying, if in fact you are faithful and loyal to these 10 commandments, and you actually observe them, regardless of all the other commandments that are out there, you're in the group. It's acceptable. And everything else beyond those, observing those other commandments beyond the 10, is actually a privilege, and something that allows you to grow, and that has a lot. And to say that there is in fact great reward, perhaps, but observing the commandment itself can be seen as a reward. And so the Torah gives you well, ample opportunity beyond the basic 10, but they're basically 10. And so there's 603 other commandments, right? Because we say there's 613, but here are the 10 that are unalterable and represent the very foundation. So you can be doing any one of the other 603, but if you're not doing these 10, you're still in a way missing the point. I'm sure there's a lot more that could be said, a lot that is probably deeper than what I've just said, but just trying to think of why just these 10 specifically. And then the third thing I was thinking about, because this is what Moses is talking about, this is the context, of the golden calf and taking those two things together, because golden represents one thing. Again, what is the literary significance of the word gold, right? That you hold something valuable, right? That it's precious, and that it sparkles, it's attractive, etc., but it's also physical. And the idea of trading in the spiritual value for something that is physical, and trading it in for those sorts of things that represent physical success, physical pleasure, etc., and of course it represents money, and how people consider money to be a source of power and other kinds of things, and see it as an ultimate benefit. I have no doubt that that's what this is referring to. Calf is interesting, right? What does a calf represent from a literary point of view? And I'm not entirely sure whether it has to do with the fact that calves are attractive. Maybe they're also vulnerable. I'm not sure. Be interesting to think further. And if any of you have any ideas that you'd like to add to this, I'd be happy to hear if you can associate what you might want to associate with that particular term. Also, I wonder something else, that putting golden and calf together may make it seem like it's something innocent, right? There's something innocent about a calf, and that putting golden calf together represents the fact that people see this as a relatively innocent practice, and then in fact it's not an innocent practice, and it can get you into a lot of trouble, and I think how it can delude a person, etc. How moving into that particular again, just playing around and meditating on these particular terms, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention in case it was something that you might want to think about yourselves. So, all right, we'll go on a little bit. 1 second. Did I do the second? No, I didn't. Okay. Right. Va'echtov al luchot, and I will write upon the tablets. The subject of Va'echtov, isn't Moses. Remember, Moses is giving this speech, but he's not saying I will write. He's referring to, this is a continuation of Moses quoting God, having said to him, I will write on those tablets. So God is saying, I will write on those tablets, et hadvarim, the statements, the words, asher hayu al haluchot harishonim asher shibarta, which were on the first tablets which you broke. And again, it's almost like every sentence here has tremendous significance. So first of all, the idea that God is rewriting these 10 commandments, and the fact that it's being referenced to the first commandments is saying that despite the fact that the Israelites sinned deeply, committed the worst sin they might be able to commit at that particular moment, that nevertheless, the idea of this covenant of these 10 commandments being reinstated fully is, I think, connoted by what's being said and how it's being said. Now, when it says, which you broke, there's several ways in which you can look at it. There's the traditional way is that in God saying to Moses, which you broke, was actually saying you did the right thing. In fact, there is there is a commentary that says Yeshar kochacha asher shibarta, that it was fantastic that you broke those commandments at that time. It was the right thing to do, to destroy them, so that they would not act as testimony and witness against the Jewish people at the time. But the fact is that despite the fact, and here it goes along with this particular statement, that despite the fact that you destroyed them at the time, they are fully reinstated. They're fully reinstated. And the whole drama, in a way, of human experience, of the fact that we can act so nobly at times, and we can go to the absolute nth degree on the opposite side of acting ignobly, doesn't mean that it's hopeless. There's always hope, and in a way, this particular sentence speaks so positively and powerfully about the role of tshuva, the role of repentance, the role of regret, the role of learning from our mistakes. And I think that's so important. So, going on, I'm sure more can be said about this, but just to try and mine out from here some of the significance of these particular words. The samtam, and you shall place them, remember this is God speaking to Moses, and you shall place them, ba'aron, in the ark, in the box. Well, if he didn't have the box to put them to begin with, so we know for sure that Moses did the right thing. He really did the right thing. And I think this might be a good place to stop for today. And I will, if anyone has any comments that you'd like to add at this point on for the record, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, I'll stop the recording and we'll continue tomorrow. So I'm going to stop the share. Okay. Any comments for the record? Okay, I'm gonna